What's up, guys? It's Enrique here with Novation and another live stream. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for tuning in to the Beats and Bytes live stream. And this time we're going to be talking about some general synthesis. We're going to be using the circuit mono station in this case, as well as the bass station 2, doing some bass line stuff. And then we got Peak doing our pads or leads, or kind of honestly whatever you want them to be, because Peak's super flexible. It's 8 voices, and yeah, we'll talk about Peak in a different Beats and Bytes. Controlling Peak, we got the Launchpad Pro, velocity sensitive, polyphonic aftertouch, straight MIDI out, no computer needed. It's a great controller. We got it in a C minor scale, same with the circuit mono station. And then with all that, we got the circuit mono station's oscillator 2 sequencer, gonna be sequencing the bass station. So with that out the way, another quick note or tip would be to basically, if you have any questions whatsoever, just throw them down into the comments. Sorry about the sirens, if you guys can hear that. Classic LA, always on the run, So basically throw any comments or questions you have down in the comment section, and we'll get to them at the end of the video during the Q&A, so don't hesitate to reach. Anyway, let's get started with some drum sounds on the circuit mono station. So we got this little pattern here going. I'm not sure if you guys heard it a second ago, which is this. Right, simple. I made, basically the cool thing with circuit mono station and the latest update is you can actually have patch flip, which means you can put a different patch per step. So I made a couple patches with some drum sounds, but let's go ahead and try to make some now. So another thing to note here is that a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about today are just general synthesis. You can try a lot of these things and these techniques with any synthesizer. I just happen to have all this Novation gear here in front of me, so we're going to be using that. But again, you can use this with basically anything. So starting here, basically selected a blank patch, right? And with that, I'm going to go ahead and put some notes down in the sequencer. I like this note. I just put it down on those 4 steps. Press play. So now I'm going to start shaping out a kick drum. I'm going to bring down my envelopes, right? Get a little click in there. Give it a little more release. Basically what I want to do here is shape the way I want the sound of the kick drum to sound as a whole. So I'm going to turn down the filter, turn up the resonance. You can already hear it kind of like making a pumping sound, right? So the cool thing here is I'm going to take the envelope within a mod matrix and send the envelope shape not only to the amp envelope, or not only to the amplifier, or the VCA, but to the filter cutoff as well. So check this. Select filter, envelope, and turn it positive. You hear it shaping it there, right? So I'm going to bring the filter down a little lower. Bam, easy. It took me like 2 seconds. Maybe let's add a little bit of noise. And how intense do we want this to sound? Give it a little distortion, maybe. Ooh. Easy. Another cool thing is you can have, especially if you have something with a second mod envelope like the bass station, you can have a second envelope shape the pitch of the kick drum. In this case, we only got 1 on the mono station, but I can still send that using the mod matrix to the pitch of oscillator 1, which is, in this case, our kick drum. Watch how it happens if I turn it all the way. You hear it's like doing a crazy pitch sound, right? That's kind of nice right there. A little more overdrive. Easy. So here, check this. I'm going to go to patches, and I'm going to save that patch right here. I just hit save, press saved again. So now I'm going to jump to a blank patch, and it's going to be back to the sound we originally started with. Bam. Turn down oscillator 1. Let's make a hi-hat now. So I'm going to turn up the noise, lower down all the values of my envelope, and just make it a really sharp little tick sound. In this case, I'm going to use a bandpass filter and just find the sweet spot. Give it a little resonance, turn the overdrive down. And same thing, I'm going to send the envelope to the filter cutoff to give it a little bit of movement. Right? Let's try something weird. Let's turn the ring up. The ring modulator is basically going to take both oscillator 1, oscillator 2, multiply them, and then basically take the sum of that and create almost like a new complex wave shape. So I'm going to go to oscillator 2. You hear it's getting a little gritty, right? Open it up a little. Oscillator. Oh, that's kind of cool right there. So we'll go to patches, save that, easy. Now let's make a snare drum. Back to a blank patch, noise up. Let's do a high pass this time. Resonance, getting there already. Envelope to the filter, but let's go negative. That's kind of cool. Turn up oscillator 1. Make it a little sharper. Bring down the decay. So simple. Some distortion. Maybe not so much of the filter. Man, I love doing this. It's so fun to just kind of explore and create these new sounds, right? Let's try bandpass. Or 24 dB high pass. That's kind of cool. Right? Boom, there. Patches again, save, save. So now if I switch over to a hi-hat, we have this weird little tingy sound, right? It's basically like my metronome. I'm gonna hit record and then basically record the kick drum over on top of this. So, boom, there's our kick drum using the patch flip that we were talking about earlier. So now I can add a snare. Or I can just play in a whole new beat, which is gonna be the hi-hat and the snare and the kick that we just made. So, right? The cool thing here is I can go back to this patch and shape it up a little more. Maybe there, and just save that patch, and now that information is stored for when it's selecting that patch within the pattern. Hear it? So the cool thing here is I have the bass station now. So I can easily just hit record on the circuit mono station and start playing a bass line on the bass station and have it be sequenced within the mono station sequencer, which is doing all my analog drum sounds. There's a bunch of different sounds that you can make with the mono station, or any synth for that matter. It's really heavily involved within a mod matrix or any kind of modulation that you have. So if you have the ability to send an envelope, whether it be the amp envelope or the mod envelope or possibly a second mod envelope, to any of the destinations like the pitch of the oscillator or the filter cutoff or anything like that, or even just levels of noise and stuff like that, that's where it really comes down to shaping up drum sounds. So like this kick drum, for example, we can make this even boomier, just raising up the release. Right? Let's try recording some of this in there. So you can hear it's jumping around through the patches, but if I just go back and play the kick drum, this hi-hat, let's change this up. Easy, save that. Lower this up a little. There we go, save that patch. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Let's open up that hi-hat a little. Cool, we'll save that. And in case you're wondering, we got a question in right now. Basically, where can I find more circuit monostation patches? We actually just came out with a ton of new patches for our newest update, which is the sample flip update. And if you go over to Novation Music, components.novationmusic.com, there you basically just log in with either your Facebook or your Google account. We're not going to post anything to your site, and you easily just plug in your circuit monostation into your computer, hit connect, and you can see your circuit monostation, what patches you have. You can back up your patches, back up your sessions, and you can also download the new sample pack from there and just take the patches and apply those to the sessions you already have. So make sure to check out the components.novationmusic.com, and there'll be a ton of info on there. It's super simple, literally just plug and play. Make it super sharp. kick a lot. Oh, let's try that real quick. Cool. All right, you know what? Before I get too lost in the circuit mono station, let's move on to the next part of the live stream, which is going to be on the bass station 2. And basically, this is just making your bass sounds. I mean, it's called the bass station. Let's make some bass sounds, right? So what I'm going to do is basically, I'm up here in the patches of up in the hundreds. The reason I'm over here is because these are all blank patches. You have 128 patches that you can have on the bass station. The first half are filled. The second half are ready for you to fill. But that doesn't mean you can't go back over the first half and fill those up yourself, which I've done countless of times. So, blank patch, simple. When it comes to making bass sounds, I mean, honestly, when it comes to making any sounds, these are all completely subjective. I might think something sounds good, that you might think something sounds horrible. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, 100%. But let's go ahead and try to make a bass sound. Right now, to me, it's a little too high pitched. Let's lower that down. We're getting there. Go over to square. It's basically just choosing the wave shape, right? I'm focusing on oscillator 1. The bass station 2 has 2 oscillators, but I'm going to just focus on oscillator 1 for now. Turn the filter down a little. So the cool thing about the bass station is that you got 2 envelopes. You got the amp envelope and the mod envelope. If I flip this switch over to mod envelope, I can now change up basically the mod envelope alone while leaving the amp envelope the where it is. So I can start moving this around, and it's not going to affect anything until I send it somewhere using either normal modulation on the face of the unit, which is basically stuff that's already set up for us to do, or using some sort of the mod matrix within the keys here. But lucky enough for us, the filter has a dedicated mod envelope depth, basically saying how much of the mod envelope am I going to send to that filter cutoff. So let's make this kind of pop a little bit at the beginning. Start turning this up. You can see the value here changing as I go up. The cool thing here is I can also send it negatively, but I'm going to focus positive. So now we're sending this positively to the filter cutoff, but it doesn't sound like it's doing much. That's because we have these all the way down. Let's open up the decay. That's kind of cool. Maybe a little too long. That's kind of tight. Let's go ahead and move the attack up a little bit to give it a little bit more of a swell. So you can see when I let go of the key, it instantly disappears. That's going to be in the amp envelope. Basically, it's closing the amplifier or the VCA and not letting any more sound come out. But if I open up the release, that's basically saying as soon as I let go of the key, how long of a time is the VCA going to slowly close? So none is like instantly closed. But if I open it up slowly, you can hear it's kind of hanging out. Right, let's turn the filter down a little bit more. Resonance up a little bit. Ooh. Cool. So we got a question in right now, basically asking if we can combine the circuit monostation with the Mother 32 using the CV and gate outputs of the circuit monostation. And yes, that doesn't just go for the Mother 32. If the DFAM has CV in, I'm not sure if it does, but you can do that. You can do any kind of modular stuff. I mean, even Peak itself has a CV mod in. You can send basically that value out of the circuit monostation to anything. The cool thing with the circuit monostation though, is that within the mod matrix, you have 6 destinations and 4 sources. Those 4 sources can go to one of the destinations known as the auxiliary CV or the aux CV. So I can send either the envelope, the LFO, the sequencer, or the velocity, both positively or negatively out of the auxiliary CV to anything else without interrupting the sequence within the circuit monostation. So it's basically, you can utilize a lot of the functions on the circuit monostation to change up stuff within the Mother 32 and have that on its own sequence and have the circuit monostation on another sequence, but still kind of have them play back and forth. So you got a CV gate and an auxiliary CV output on the circuit monostation, as well as a clock in and a clock output. That release is a little long. Let's bring that down. Cool, so that's just a single oscillator. Let's turn up oscillator 2. And I'm gonna flip this switch to go over to oscillator 2. Change the octave of it. Actually, I'll stick to 8. Actually, let's just go 1 up. I don't know why this reminds me of Sonic the like oil level. The cool thing here is I'm going to take oscillator 2 and change the fine tuning of it just a little bit to basically offset the wave shapes, and it kind of creates this weird flangery, almost phasey chorus sound. So check this. I'm going to hold down a single note and then turn it. So let's see. You hear that? Turn the sustain all the way up. So remember that mod envelope that we have just kind of plucking the filter? The cool thing here is I can set the mod envelope to also pluck the pitch of oscillator 1 or 2. In this case, I'm going to say oscillator 2. Let's go up by just 5. Oh, that's even a little harsh right there. Let's go 3. Back to the mod envelope and kind of shape this a little more. That's cool. So because of this screen, I can say oscillator 2, the mod envelope depth is only 3. I'm going to go to 1 and also set it to 3. So they both do the same amount. Anybody want some 90s Hoover? This is a way to kind of add some character to your sounds. We got a question here basically saying, are there examples of the Base Station 2 patches that use FM, whether it's the oscillator, the filter, or the mod? With that, basically, since this is all analog, you do kind of have some, I wouldn't call it necessarily FM, but you can sync the oscillators together, which is kind of cool. It gets you some really weird, harsh sounds. There is a cool feature here called the oscillator filter mod, which basically sends the oscillator over to the filter cutoff. So we got this bass patch here, which is actually kind of cool. I'm gonna go ahead and save that as 111. Bam, let's go to 112 and kind of mess around with the oscillator 2 sync. So if I turn up oscillator 2, you can see here in the oscillator menu, we basically have an oscillator 1-2 sync. Holding down function, I can turn that on, and this is gonna give us kind of this weirder, basically, I don't know how to really explain it, but as soon as I change the pitch of oscillator 2, its wave shape is gonna get reset based on oscillator 1's wave shape, so it won't go too far out of tune. So check this out. I'm gonna hold down a note and then move oscillator 2's pitch. You kind of hear that, right? So the cool thing here is if I set the LFO 1 to oscillator 2's pitch, and then maybe up an octave. So another thing you can do to kind of get some more almost bell tone FME stuff out of this is I'm going to leave those synced together, the oscillator 1 and 2, but I'm going to turn down the volume of both oscillator 1 and 2 and then focus on the ring modulator. Similar to the circuit monostation, it's basically going to take those two wave shapes, multiply them, and take their differences and create a new, I guess you can call it a complex wave shape. So you can hear how gnarly this sounds right now. But if I change the tune, I can find these sweet spots. And then from here, it's basically just shaping that sound up. Like if we wanted this to be more of a bell tone, we're getting there, right? We'll go to the mod envelope, turn down our filter, turn up the resonance, mod envelope to the filter. If I'm going too fast, let me know. So, start shaping this up. Let's go down an octave. Let's start messing around with actually, you know what? Let's unsync them and see what happens. So, because I'm going to unsync them, let's see, where's it at? Off. Because I've unsynced them, their pitch is going to be really playing off each other super hard, but it's still based on oscillator 1. So let's go to oscillator 1, go up, and let's set this to a sine wave, a very simple wave shape. That way, the ringing between the two isn't too drastic. Let's actually set them both to sine waves. The main difference here is I'm going to set one 2 ranges or 2 octaves lower than the other. You can already hear it kind of getting more bell sound, right? Back to oscillator too. Let's go to oscillator 1 and set this to a triangle. Let's try sawtooth. Ooh. So now let's try the oscillator filter mod. This is probably going to sound insane. Whoa. Sorry, I've never made this sound before. I'm surprising myself. This is what I'm saying. Like, you can have so much fun just exploring sound. I can't tell you how many hours I've wasted on this thing. I got a note from the guy helping me do the live stream, Taylor Morgan, and he's telling me to save this because this is his base station. This is awesome. Cool. Saving that as 112. You got that, Taylor? 112. Maybe open that up. Let's try this with an ARP. So I'm going to turn on the arpeggiator. Actually, let's design an ARP real quick. Turn this over to record. Basically what record is, I can enter in notes and then it'll play that back as an arpeggiated sequence. So I can say, play this note, rest here, rest, rest. Let's do here, here, here. And yeah, 8 steps. Then I'm gonna go back to play, legato, or arpeggiator on, and latch, then press it. Oh, that's cool right there. Has that texture to it, it's really nice. Just gotta lower this down. What happens when we throw some glide in there? That's cool. Let's throw in the sub oscillator. We're talking about bass patches and I'm over here making bells. Let's, there it is. Oh man, this is awesome. Cool, so again, before I waste too much time on the bass station, that's some simple ways to make bass patches is basically focusing on the way the filter moves when you hit the sound. You know, a lot of this comes from like almost phonetically making these sounds with your mouth. I do this a lot, like a boom, boom. You can hear that boom and then the boom, boom. So you basically want that, as foolish as it may sound or as weird as you may look, just sitting in a corner making weird noises with your mouth. It really helps with the outcome and the vision you might have for the sound that you want to make. You want a slow attack, you know, whomp, whomp. You know, before I keep embarrassing myself, basically mess around with the filter, heavily utilize the mod matrix, and try messing around with stuff like a ring modulator, but also adding the sub so it still has the stability of the note that you're playing. So from there, let's go ahead and move over to the peak. Peak itself is going to be an 8-voice polyphonic synthesizer. It's kind of a hybrid. It's got these really crazy digital oscillators in the front end of it, which are basically 24 megahertz, where most other digital synths are like 44 kilohertz to 96, around there. So you won't hear any aliasing or anything like that, but the benefit of these is that you have a lot of wavetable stuff, linear FM stuff for the guy who asked about the FM stuff on the base station. And from all this craziness, you go into the analog mixer, analog VCA, analog filter, and 3 analog overdrives, and all that's run in parallel with the effects. And basically what that means is you're still going to have the warmth and the color of all the analog stuff, but the really good processing power of the DSP for the effects. But they're not, the analog signal is not forced into there, so you still get a lot of the warmth. They're ran in parallel next to each other. It's not one after the other, right? So I'm using the Launchpad Pro in a C minor scale to kind of mess around with the peak. So as I did on most of the other things, I'm going to go ahead and hit the initialize button. We go here, initialize patch. Peak is so fast when it comes to making like a usable sound, right? This is nothing. Usually where I like to start is how I want the sound to kind of come in and come out. So I'm going to turn up some of the attack. You can already hear it's kind of like pushing itself forward, right? Turn up some of the release. So when I let it go, it kind of hangs around. So now I'm going to focus on the wave shapes. If I go to more, you'll see that here on the screen it's changed to the BS sign, the base station sign. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of move this knob here, or change these values. Tubi's one of my favorites. So Tubi, once you get into a wave shape, even if you're in the analog wave shapes, if you turn the shape knob, you're basically interpolating between 5 positions of each wave table. So check this, if I hold down a note, it gets kind of vowel-y, right? So I can, instead of me just manually moving this around, there's a really crazy mod matrix in here. So I'm gonna go to mod envelope 2, mod, the mod matrix basically, and I'm gonna say on slot 1, I want to affect oscillator 1's shape amount, OSC SHPE, by how much. So before I set the source, I'm gonna set the final, basically destination amount. So from here, I want it to go maybe there, just touch that like really thin sound. So in here, I have 2 sources, but I want the source to be mod matrix 2. So we'll say, where is it at? Mod envelope, oh, did I say mod matrix 2? Mod envelope 2. I'm sure you guys knew what I meant. So now, mod envelope 2, when I change these sounds around, I can kind of find the sweet spot with my sustain. Oh, this is so cool. So the cool thing with peak is that's just one oscillator. Each voice is made up of 3 oscillators. So I'm gonna go ahead and start turning up oscillator 2. Go to pulse width. And I'm gonna set LFO 1 to move around the shape of the pulse width. Hear that? It's going past the 0 point, so it's cutting out. So I'm gonna take the manual and move it back a little bit so that it doesn't hit that point. There we go. Turning that up. Do a little chorus on this. I moved like 4 knobs off an initialized patch. This is insane. And I mean, honestly, like the options are endless from here. I haven't even touched the filter. Let's turn the filter down. Resonance. Let's make this really dirty. So I'm gonna take basically the overdrive before the filter and turn that basically all the way up. I'm gonna take the VCA gain, so I'm gonna blow your ears out, and turn that down. Same with the distortion. I'm gonna turn the post distortion. So we got distortion before the filter and after. Turning the VCA gain. Oh, it's coming in hot. Give it a little noise. So remember that trick we did to give the kind of a chorusy effect on the bass station where we took the second oscillator and moved the fine tuning a bit instead of the chorus? Let's go ahead and do that here on the peak. Opening this up. Now it's like really off. Give it a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay. Let's get this time really short. Car plus strong style. Oh, this is awesome. So I'm gonna take the amp envelope, which opening up the amplifier, and send that to the filter cutoff as well. Push it to its limits. do something weird. I'm gonna go to the oscillator 3, turn that up, and I'm gonna find the E piano wave shape. So turning this over, E piano. Turning down the other oscillators, we can hear what we're working with and the noise. Shape it up. Let's do 7. Does that work? Take this in so many different directions. I mean, as far as making pads and like leads, and just sounds like you're ripping the universe apart. Peak is probably the quickest synth out there, at least for me, because I'm so familiar with it at this point. With this being said, I'm really tempted in kind of like tying all this stuff together. So let's go to the last portion of our Beats and Bytes, which is tying all this stuff together. So we got that drum sound here, right? Pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and slow down the tempo a little bit. Right, we're at 102. So that sequence is on oscillator 1. The way I have this stuff routed, basically, these two are connected together and these two are connected together. The MIDI output of the base station is on MIDI channel 2, which is going into the circuit monostation's oscillator 2, which is also MIDI channel 2. From there, I'm sending the MIDI out of the circuit monostation back into the base station 2 on MIDI channel 2, oscillator 2. Why would I do that? So I can press play here, have something like a drum beat going on oscillator 1, then I can go to oscillator 2, maybe select 2 patterns, hit record on here, and record the bass line here. The cool thing here is when I play these notes, it's gonna nudge them and force them onto the C minor scale. So watch this. Let's just throw in something random. So you can hear it kind of change it up a little bit, right? So because I have that in the C minor scale, I got this guy in the C minor scale, and this is completely independent from that. So let's try this. Patterns, select a new drum pattern. So this pattern has nothing on it, right? On the circuit mono station. Get this a little cleaner. Launch those drums again. Play some leady stuff. I'm gonna move the attack, get this a little more plucky. Let's go ahead and record a new pattern in. Honestly, this setup's a lot more powerful than I originally thought. Questions, guys, by all means, you can do this too. We got a question in. Basically, can circuit monostation's oscillator 2 MIDI channel be separated from the new mod sequence MIDI channel? The answer to that is, I believe, yes, because if I stop this, if I go and hold down Shift in Sessions, I can then select basically what the mod sequencer is listening to. So right now, basically everything out of CV gate in the mod and the CV gate in the mod sequencer, the CV gate's listening to oscillator 1. If I do this, it's now listening to oscillator 2. If I do this, it's now listening to the mod sequencer, which if we go to the mod sequencer, you can see that all these notes here are now being sent out of the CV and gate, basically changing what the CV and gate output is reading. Oscillator 2 is always going to be on oscillator 2 or MIDI channel 2, and oscillator 1 is always going to be MIDI channel 1. I hope that answers your question. I think it's so cool. Let's get a little drifty in here. Turning up the drift, get a little nastier. Alright, should we bring the drums back in? Let's do it. 5, 6, 7, 8. Sounds like I know what I'm doing. Scrolling through the octave. Can't get through my fingers. Anyway, that's about it here for us, guys. Be sure to tune in to the next Beats and Bytes. Oh, one last question. What is the price of each product? So with that, Peak is going to be $12.99. It's definitely our beast mode of a synth. It's the real deal. 8 voices. It's super packed with features. And yeah, it's probably my workhorse now in my studio. But this one here is going to be $12.99. Launchpad Pro is $2.99. But I believe it's currently on a promo until the end of August for $249. So 250 bucks, 50 bucks off. That's online or your local music stores or anything like that. The base station right now is $399, and then the circuit mono station is also $399. So with that, $399, $399, $249 until the end of August, then it's going back to $299, and then we got $12.99 for this guy here. So the next stream is basically going to be on sequencers, including circuit and its new 1.7 update. So be sure to tune in next month for that. But with all that being said, I'm Enrique working here for Novation, and yeah, be sure to check you guys next time. Peace.